Hey guys, it's Max back with another video, and today I'm taking another look at the Samsung NX1 and specifically the buffer of this camera. Now I've had this camera for about a month and a half now. I've had a lot of experience with it, with photography, with video, and I'm excited to get my full review as well as a GH4 comparison out here really shortly. Hopefully I'll wrap that up and get that information to you guys. So if you're not yet subscribed, definitely hit that sub button to make sure you guys don't miss that. Now the last couple of days there's been a lot of talk about the buffer amount after a couple videos came out, so I wanted to do some testing for myself and see how this camera does, because I typically don't do fast action, sports, anything like that. You know, I've done a lot of weddings where, you know, you have the first kiss or the bride walking down the aisle that you want to make sure to get, but that's about it as far as you know, high frame rate shooting. So I'm using a 45 megabyte per second SanDisk card, an 80 megabyte per second SanDisk card, as well as a 90 megabyte per second PNY card. So let's take a look at the results. Now at the top you'll see the raw 15 frames per second. For the 45 card I got 20, for the SanDisk 80 I got 20, and for the PNY I have 19. Now if we slow down just a little bit to 12 frames per second, we're going to get a couple more images. I have 23 for the 45 card, 23 for the 80, and 23 for the PNY, so very similar there. And again, for the 10 frames per second, you'll see I'm going 25, 24, and 27 for the PNY. And if we slow down all the way to 8 frames per second, I'll have 27 for the 45 SanDisk, 25 for the 80 SanDisk, and 27 once again for the PNY. So it's not that much more images before the camera basically goes super slow. We get the huge, you know, really fast burst, and then it slows down. I'll let you guys listen to the 15 frames per second right here. That high frame rate did not last very long. Of course, at 15 frames per second raw, we get just about a second. Now we slow down to 8 frames per second raw. We don't get that much more images, just 7 more photos, but because we're shooting less per second, we get about a 3-second burst. So if you know your action is going to last more than 1 second, you're really going to have to step down to that point. Now one thing that was really interesting to me is that there's no options as far as, you know, a lower megapixel raw option. So you get the full 28 megapixels on the 7D Mark II as well as other Canon cameras. I know you can change some options. So for that 7D Mark II, you can either go the full 20 megapixel raw, you could do like a 11 megapixel raw, or you could do a 5 megapixel raw. So if you don't, you know that you don't need that full resolution, but you want to have kind of a longer burst for the high frame rate, that's an option to do, but you can't do that with the NX1. Let's take a look at the JPEGs. So shooting at 15 frames per second, we have 71, 70, and 71. If we go down to 12, we get a nice jump there, 112, 108, 109. Jumping down to 10, it's basically the same. And then jumping down to 8, we get another nice little kick, 160, 165, and 186. So still, it's not a really huge jump. We don't have a large amount. Even at 8 frames per second doing the super fine 28 megapixel, you don't really have that much. And of course, you're sacrificing the ability to be able to manipulate your images quite a bit more, you know, going from the RAW to the JPEG. Next thing I wanted to talk about is the speed of the cards, because I'm sure some of you guys may say that the NX1 supports the new UHS 2 cards, which are a lot faster and a lot more expensive. So I added in a couple other video tests that I found online. One is by Michael the Mentor, and he's using a 95 megabyte extreme card, and that's about $40. And then the other one is using the new UHS 2 cards. His name's Lewis, and that one is about $150. So that's way more expensive than the cards I'm using, between $18 to $35. Now the performance is very, very interesting. So there's my results right there that you saw before. I got 20 RAW at 15 frames per second on that $25 card. Michael the Mentor got 22, and then Lewis got 16 using that crazy fast $150 card. Basically the point of that is you're not really going to get faster performance, at least what we're seeing now with the current firmware. I don't know if that could be some firmware issue, but the camera's set to support those newer cards, but either the buffer can't get the info out fast enough. There's something holding this thing back. So realistically, you shouldn't be wasting your money on a $150 card, because it's not going to do any better than the $18 card that I was testing myself. So keep that in mind. So what can we do to get more frames with this camera recorded without slowing down. That's what I wanted to take a look at next. So let's look at this chart. So in this next chart, you see up top, I got the superfine 28 megapixel JPEG 15 frames per second. Those are my results. Next, I decided to drop the resolution down by half, basically 14 megapixel, and realistically I got a little bit more shots, but you know, not much, not worth dropping the resolution in half. So maybe just maybe it'd be worth me going to the medium compression, not doing super fine, just doing fine, and let's see what we got. So we also got a little bit of a bump, but really not much to warrant you know, compressing the JPEG even more so, but keeping the 28 megapixel resolution. So my last resort, what if we really start crippling this camera, which really realistically we don't want to do. I'm going to drop it to 14 megapixel. I'm going to drop, you know, increase more compression to get that file size down. Let's take a look at what we got. And I got the 102 frames, I got 95, and weirdly enough on the PNY card I got only 74, basically the same as getting, you know, doing the super fine at 28 megapixel. So realistically, it's not really worth doing that either. You're getting a little bit more frames, but you know, nothing that's worth compressing your image and dropping your resolution. The last thing I want to do is compare the NX1 to the biggest competitor as far as photos, the 7D Mark II. The 7D Mark II does 10 frames per second at 14-bit, which has more data than the 15 frames per second at 12-bit on the NX1. So you'll have more room to play with because of the more information there. Now, as far as the RAW and the specs, the 7D Mark II does 31 frames before slowing down at 14-bit, 20 megapixel. NX1 does 25 frames, so less, at 28 megapixel, 12-bit RAW. Now what's really interesting to me is the JPEG results, which really show the performance of the buffer in the 7D Mark II compared to the NX1. We have 1090 JPEG burst on that 7D Mark II. So you're almost going forever. You're not going to have any issues whatsoever if you're shooting JPEG there compared to the 139. I mean, that's close to 10 times as much. So if you're a sports shooter and you shoot RAW, that's something you're going to have to definitely think about before buying the NX1. You're going to have just over 1 second of a shooting time at 15 frames per second before the camera slows down considerably. Now, on the other hand, on the 7D Mark II at 10 frames per second, you're going to get, you know, about 3, maybe just over 3 seconds of full 10 frames per second shooting. So definitely think about that. And if you shoot JPEG in your sports shooter, you know, the NX1 still might do okay, but compared to the 7D Mark II, it's not there. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you guys like it, please give me a thumbs up and let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, definitely hit that subscribe button. I'll have a lot more great content coming up soon on this camera and a lot of other stuff as well. Now, if you're interested in this camera, I have a Facebook group. I'll have a link in the description. Make sure you hit that and join that. There's a lot of great people that have this camera already that are, you know, being a part of a community, helping each other out, sharing their work, stuff like that. So make sure you hit that. And if you guys are thinking about buying this camera, I'll have a link in the description below. Regardless of this buffer issue, if you're not a sports photographer, if you're a filmmaker, or you do other photography, it actually is a fantastic camera. I've really been enjoying it. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.